Ladies.
Ladies.
We have one here, of course. Dignified.
A biological lady.
Yeah, best kind.
Yeah.
Not Eddie Izzard.
Yeah.
You may have been on birth control for many years now. What if I told you it might be having some unexpected effects on your taste in men, your taste in women, and worsening the total baby bust in the West in different ways than you might imagine? Here's the truth about birth control. Strap in. Gets a bit weird. For more on the social effects of the sexual revolution, you can pay £5 a month and go and watch Harry and I review The Case Against the Sexual Revolution by Louise Perry. And yes, it is two blokes sitting around talking about an issue which mainly affects women, but we ran it by our girlfriends and they hated whores as well, so we're all A-okay. All right, let's go to the first one, shall we? So we're talking about the contraceptive pill. We're talking mainly about the combined pill, and I'm using the NHS as a source just because in Britain this is the one that doles out the most dosages. But I believe in America it's pretty much the same one. It's progesterone and estrogen combined. The combined oral contraceptive pill is called just the pill. It contains artificial virgins, depending on which one, but it's easier to extract that than get the proper hormone a lot of the time. Estrogen and progesterone, which are produced naturally in the ovaries. When taken correctly, the pill is over 99% effective at preventing pregnancy. This means that fewer than 1 in 100 who use the pill will get pregnant every year. Minor side effects include mood swings, nausea, tenderness, and headaches. They usually settle down in a few months. There is no evidence the pill will make you gain weight. There is very low risk of serious side effects, such as blood clots and cervical cancer. There may be a link between the pill and depression, but evidence is mixed and further research needed. Okay, seems pretty balanced. They may be underselling the psychological effects, though, because if we go to the next one, article in The Independent, almost 1/4 of women blame hormonal contraception for relationships ending. Bit strange. We're going to see a lot of testimonies emerge here. Almost 1/4 of women who have taken hormonal contraception say it caused or played a role in the end of their relationship. Data from Britain's biggest law firm, Stowe Family Law, shared exclusively with The Independent, found that 85% said their marriage or relationship had been impacted by contraception side effects. 63% of women were forced to come off a form of contraception due to side effects altering their relationship. Almost 9 in 10 women who had used hormonal contraception said it had affected their mental or physical health. Researchers who polled 506 women aged between 18 and 60 found over 7 in 10 of them who had taken hormonal contraception said they suffered mood swings, while almost half had experienced depression, and around 3 in 10 said they had anxiety. So these weren't listed on the medical page. Now, of course, these are just anecdotal testimonies. It's a pretty significant survey, but still more research is needed, as the NHS acquiesced. But if the limit, relationship breakdown's pretty bad, but if the limit is something that therapy could hopefully mitigate, that's not too bad, right? Okay. Go next. BBC are now doing documentaries on this, which is quite interesting. So it's beginning to gain a bit of traction, and obviously the documentaries are spearheaded by women, so this isn't just misogyny rearing its ugly head. Countless studies have identified strong links between taking the pill and having poor mental health, and a new BBC Two documentary sheds the light on the severity of the problem, realising how it's left some women suffering from depression and experiencing suicidal thoughts. One found women taking the pill, either the combined pill or progesterone-only pill, this is a study by the way, were more likely to be prescribed an antidepressant than those not on hormonal contraception. The difference was particularly noticeable for young women aged between 15 and 19 on the combined pill. Another link found between hormonal contraception, suicide attempts, and actual suicide. So, when we've had lockdown recently, when we've had TikTok accelerating girls' identity crises, that they've picked up things like tics and mental health conditions from watching other girls doing videos in this social contagion fashion, when we've got a massive overprescription of young girls on mental health services in this country, this might be a factor exacerbating the social issues. So,
I mean, you know what's weird is, years ago when I was on the pill, this was nothing. What's interesting to me is that this is kind of nothing new, because things like weight gain, feeling insecure, being a bit sort of like, was definitely a factor with me amongst female friends. And the reason, I mean, this is just to put the slightly sort of devil's advocate. I think that the pill was sort of increasingly used was because, frankly, men don't like using condoms. So there was a bit like, well, it's kind of it sort of swings and roundabouts. But very definitely, I know a lot of my friends were like, yeah, but I can't really stay on it because, look at the size of me. Because, literally there'd be sort of slim women, and then they'd be, the next time I saw them, at the size of a house. And then obviously, if you're with somebody who has been attracted to you as a sort of like slim, this kind of like the cracker, and then they see you next time and you're the size of a mountain, that's not good.
No.
But then you're back to what are your choices?
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Male responsibility.
So, male responsibility,
and
that was one
the
thing.
advent of the sexual revolution has encouraged women to sleep around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Put more demands on the men you're willing to sleep with by at least being in a relationship beforehand. And the advice is tough, but maybe don't sleep with a man who you wouldn't want to risk ending up with a kid. Because we just had the conversation about abortion being mass available, and it's not done well for our concept of the sanctity of life in society. Ladies, be a bit more careful who you bring home, because he might not be the best for you. And this is facilitating that irresponsible behaviour, which will leave a lot of women brokenhearted or unexpected mothers, or they might have to take very drastic measures to avoid being a mother, and that's
But as you know, as I'm an honest person, you know, I've flattened a lot of grass. You know, I am a sin. I have sinned in ways which I cannot go into now because this is a family show.
We've all picked the wrong person.
Picked the wrong person one or two or several other times. But what I would say is that, you know, and back to sort of Christianity, is that we are human, we are flawed, we are sexual beings. And it is navigating that landscape. I can say, because I've been on the planet for quite a while, and there are things. I mean, do I regret things? No, I think regret is pointless because you become the person you are, and you're able to give advice or the benefit of wisdom. But I would say this is something we're going to have to re-navigate, re-look at, because we've strayed so far from common sense.
Well, women are
Hence
unfortunately
what we're talking about.
making a lot of avoidable mistakes.
Yes.
It's not leading to long-lasting relationships. I think it's 30% of all men these days are having no sex at all, and the similar number of women is about 20%.
And that's really worrying.
That's population collapse levels.
That's really worrying that men are afraid. I think didn't we talk about that last time, where they're afraid to approach women, or, you know, meet them in a bar, say, you know, do you want a drink, blah blah blah, because there's this weird, almost desexualization, which is. We have to be careful that we're not running this in sort of tandem with what we're talking about.
What I would say is form wholesome relationships. Don't sleep around with everyone you know. And even if the instinct to men and women wanting to have a little bit of fun without necessarily having a kid instantly is going to happen, maybe the mass medication of girls from the age of 15 isn't the solution.
I mean, that is. I mean, 15.
Very worrying.
I mean,
the average age is about 14.
About 14. I mean, that is getting younger and younger, and that there is no way you can know, as a girl. I mean, you don't really know it. You don't sort of know anything.
No.
You know what I mean? That's definitely changed since I was that age.
Speaking of getting into a relationship and looking different by the time you come out of it, this is quite interesting. The pill is starting to have effect on the women, how they choose the men that they're with.
This is interesting.
So, a group of women were asked in a lab condition to smell T-shirts that had been worn by a group of unknown and unwashed men. All they had to do was say which shirts smelled the best to them, right? So most female volunteers had equivalent preferences to their rodent counterparts. So basically, mice prefer the scents of mice that smell the least like them, so that genetic diversity is maximised.
That makes sense. Yes, for immunity purposes.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't want to contaminate the bloodline by basically being incestuous accidentally. Numerous studies in mice showed that, given the choice, they sniff out mates with genes for immunity which differ from their own, and this seems to increase their chances of producing healthy offspring. Among the volunteers, there was a startling exception to this trend. Women on the contraceptive pill showed the reverse preference. They chose men whose genes for immunity were closest to their own. So the guy who ran this experiment, his name is Klaus Wedekind, it's Swiss. He says, my guess is that the pill simulates pregnancy, and maybe during pregnancy, odour preferences change. The theory is that during pregnancy, a female is attracted to the smell of her own relatives who have similar majority histocompatibility complex genes. After all, family members have the greatest interest in seeing their offspring survive. So women whose bodies are tricked into thinking they're pregnant by progesterone might have the same tendency. So you're not readying women to pick men to mate with.
You're smelling someone who will provide security.
Yes.
Not other biological
yes.
factors. Well, that's interesting. I mean, it could be that, or it could be, if it does cause depression, that you're
settling.
You're exactly. You're settling.
Yeah, you're sleeping your way out of a bad mood.
Yeah.
Also not something to be encouraged, because that's not a very sustainable way to build self-esteem.
No.
And that's certainly a crisis that women are having right now with TikTok and Instagram and all that.
Yeah.
So it's interlacing the social issues. Very worrying.
Yes.
What about the pill and women's sexuality? So if we go to British Medical Journal study, placebo-controlled comparisons of combined oral contraceptives and progesterone-only oral contraceptives were conducted in Scotland and the Philippines. Negative effects of the combined pill on libido in Scottish women, half of whom reported reduced sexual interest, was the result. Now, in all fairness, if you're trying to sleep with Scottish women, I wouldn't be surprised if they're not all that up for it, because if you've
Especially
seen
if it's
Scottish
Nicola
women...
Sturgeon.
We Jimmy Cranky.
We Jimmy Cranky.
In the Philippines, levels of sexual interest were not significantly reduced, possibly because the women had much lower levels before starting the pill compared with the Scottish women. That's important, as you said. It does interlace, playing devil's advocate, with social factors.
Yes.
But when you apply it to a very sexually revolutionised society where women are told not to settle down and go out and be a boss girl and sleep around at university, disastrous effects for women's self-esteem and the guys they possibly end up with.
Yeah.
What if a large-scale social movement had defined masculinity itself as toxic? We'll go on to this one. A study from The Atlantic.
Wow.
Basically, women's preferences for facial features change if they're on the pill. And they prefer less masculine men the longer they're on the pill.
Also, if men are becoming less masculine because they've been emasculated, is it just the pill? She says, like a lawyer, asking the other side of the question.
Partially, yes, because also, if you think about the effect of the pill, it's allowed women to enroll in higher education, stay in the workplace longer. This was an ambition of the second wave feminists who deliberately wanted to destroy the family, according to Simone de Beauvoir.
Yeah.
And what happens is a lot of women are complaining that they're out-earning the men. But obviously, women, understandably, want a guy who earns more than them, evolutionarily speaking, for security. So you're having these competing goals of wanting a guy for more security and the fact that the pill has made you enter the workplace. Men are not earning as much, so they can't provide you that security. So that's why many relationships are either women settling with beta males or not having relationships at all.
Yes, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We've basically come to, yeah.
It's an Ouroboros of castration. Not fun. So if
Yeah.
we just read this a little bit. Researchers in Scotland designed several experiments that delved further into the hormonal quirks brought by birth control. In the first, they gave young straight women the ability to digitally alter men's faces. The participants tinkered with features like cheekbone prominence, jaw height, and face width. It's like creating a character in Skyrim. Attempting to find the perfect ratio of attractiveness for either a short-term or long-term relationship, some did the same but with female faces, so obviously some were lesbians. None of the women who were taking birth control at the start, after the experiment, they were given the option to think to start it. About a third of them started taking birth control, right? So you have a control group and you have a third that are on birth control after they make the initial faces.
Right.
3 months later, they replicated the experiment. In the second study, volunteers were asked to rate the attractiveness of the manliness of men in relationships based on their mugshots. Half, 85 of these men, were dating women who had been on the pill when they first met. After beginning a regimen of hormonal birth control, the women's ideal of attractiveness in a potential romantic partner skewed significantly less masculine. They were more likely, for example, to prefer narrower jawbones and rounder faces. These preferences appear to translate to real-life decisions. The men whose partners who had been on the pill when they first started dating were found, as a whole, to be less masculine looking.
Wow, that is so fascinating. Because I suppose, of course, the pill is dumbing down that's not really the right phrase, but it's squashing suppressing your natural inclination, your biological sort of determinant to go for essentially
the muscular bloke. Yeah.
So the muscular bloke.
If you're not in peak estrogen, then that means that you're not as interested in the physical dimensions of sex, which means that you're happy to settle for a less attractive man. And not being funny, as we've learned with the amount of ugly Antifa protesters, a lot of the time, better looking people put the work in to be better looking.
Yeah.
So a guy that's in shape is going to be more virtuous than a guy who's a slubbish beta male feminist.
Yeah.
And so they're settling for these beta male feminists and wondering why they're not man enough to have a relationship.
Yeah, a sort of straight Benjamin Butterworth. I think of the those slubbish. Do you know what I mean?
Character from Arthur. Yeah.
Exactly. He's like, that is who I have in my head.
Yeah. Don't sleep with Star Wars sequel fans, basically. Yeah. Also, is it making women angrier? So if you think about it, they've got social animosity against men. Now they've got an animosity to male features.
Yes.
And they're more depressed, anxious, and suicidal. And you wonder why the feminist movements are getting screechier and screechier in their protest movements. This is a BBC article published today, of all things. Oh. Thank you to Rory for forwarding me this. A BBC analysis of 10 years of data from the Gallup Word Poll. Women are getting angrier. Every year, the poll surveys more than 120,000 people, massive sample size, in more than 150 countries, asking, among other things, what emotions they felt for a loss of the previous day. The BBC's analysis found that since 2012, more women than men report feelings of sadness and worry. When it comes to anger and stress, the gap is widening with men. In 2012, both genders reported anger and stress at similar levels. 9 years later, women are angrier by a margin of 6 percentage points and more stressed.
Wow.
So it could purely be ideology. or it could be a combination of both.
Yes, it could be. Yes, I mean, speaking personally, my anger, my fury is off the fucking charts.
Oh yeah, because everything's going wrong.
Because of the last 2.5 years, and because everything that's still happening. You know,
Absolutely.
as we know, the WEF, the whole sort of global agenda. But that is interesting that younger women and maybe are they're angry because they're not having their because in evolutionary terms, they're having their opportunity sort of cut off.
Yes.
And so are men.
Yeah, they're having.
So are women definitely? So they're more angry.
Yes.
So women. Right.
Which
Connor goes, let me tell you, that's the truth. Yeah, it's
you've met my missus.
Yeah, Anna's lovely.
Now,
but it's very sad.
The concerning thing is, are you familiar with the lesbian domestic violence rate by any chance? It's massively higher than it is with straight couples and gay male couples.
No, the lesbian anger.
Domestic violence rate.
Lesbian anger.
Yeah, I think it's something
Crikey.
like 70% of all lesbian women have reported being hit by an intimate partner at least once in their life.
God.
So what if the birth control pill was making you a lesbian?
God, we're into. Well, I mean, free speech. We can put it out there as a theory.
So yes, we can actually. This is posited by Dr. Sarah Hill, who did an interview with Chris Williamson, who's a friend of the show. I've spoken to him about
Chris.
this.
Is it Geordie, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Geordie.
Yeah.
Great.
Never let him forget Love Island.
Yeah.
So a 2011 study of around 2,000 women published in the journal Proceedings of the Royal Society B explored sexual satisfaction and partner attraction among women who met their partners when they were on the pill versus those who only started using birth control after the starting relationship. Right. Results showed women who met their partners when they were on the pill scored lower in both measures. They also rated the partner's body and sexual adventurousness lower than in the control group. Another study published in 2018 by the University of Glasgow found that women's preferences for masculine faces were generally stable, regardless of whether they took the pill or were ovulating. So there's counter-research, as there always is in this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Then there's a bunch of testimonies in this article about women who said that their bisexuality increased when they started taking the pill, including some woman that said that I went off men completely and I now have a girlfriend. Obviously, this is just independent testimony.
Right.
So Dr. Hill said, the jury is still out on whether the pill can cause significant shifts in sexuality. My take on the preponderance of the evidence that I've seen is that the answer to the question is it can have an effect, but I don't know it's going to happen all the time. However, have you seen the recent reporting that Gen Z is 40% identifying as LGBT?
40%?
Yeah, I believe it's between 1 in 6 and 4 in 10. That's, again, could be purely sociological, could be purely.
Yes.
Very speculative.
Right.
But it might be an exacerbating factor.
It could be a combination. What it sounds like to me is a combination of medication.
Yeah.
It could not just the pill. It could also be the antidepressants. Let's be fair.
Absolutely.
But also because these women aren't finding men satisfactory in a sexual sense because they're looking at them and seeing
beta males.
Beta males.
This is
precisely.
what Cara Delevingne said the other day. Not exactly the font of sense, but she said men lack the tools to pleasure women. Now, biologically speaking, that's bollocks, quite literally. However, is she speaking from her immediate experience and the circle of people she's surrounded with in a very liberal, Californian, sexually revolutionized setting as to where she's going, well, all the men are weak male feminists and I just prefer the company of a woman, even if they're angrier.
Yeah, even if they're angry women. Yeah. I mean, we're basically seeing a major shift to sort of asexual. I mean,
it's got its own flag now.
Yeah, exactly. It's got its own bloody flag. This is really worrying.
The most worrying part we'll come on to right now at the end.
Oh my God, there's more.
Yeah, what if the castration was quite literal? So if we can look at this, birth control pills are adding 10 million doses of progesterone into the wastewater every day in America. Now that was 3 years ago, so you can only imagine it's increasing with the amount of young girls taking it.
Yeah.
In the US, 15 million women regularly take birth control pills, which typically rely on the synthetic form of estrogen and progesterone known as EE2. Since it's an endocrine disruptor, EE2 can interfere with reproductive hormones and development if consumed in excess or by vulnerable individuals like infants. So in utero, it might be affecting it.
Right.
According to Siegel, birth control pills add more than 10 million doses of synthetic estrogen to America's wastewater every day. The estimates based on the number of women who take oral contraceptives in the US assumes those women take the pill 21 days of the month, when some even take it 30 to just delay their periods, and excrete around 90% of the dose into wastewater. So the dosage is way higher than needed, but just to ensure we got the intended effect.
Yeah.
A 2010 study determined that birth control pills account for less than 1% of total estrogen found in US drinking water. So that might sound quite good. It might just be plastics, right? But since local water systems don't test for EE2, the study's authors noted, it's hard to say for sure how much the hormone is in our water. We've got the same problem in the UK now, to the point of where it is making fish species, if we go to the Guardian reporting, go entirely extinct because it's involuntarily skewing most of their eggs female, and it's making amphibians change their gender. So they're putting chemicals in the water to turn the freaking frogs trans.
Yeah. Now, I have heard this. This is not a new theory.
No, it's not.
It
has had some effects.
Obviously, things that are in the water are going to have some effect. But I think it is all. But I think mainly it is. It is the left trying to.
I think it's ideology.
Destroy.
I think it's plastics.
Yes.
But there's also this. And the interesting thing is, this was 10 years ago. So they've invested 30 billion in to try and purify this.
Yeah.
The problem is they still couldn't test for it in the UK, so they don't know how much has.
Right.
Not only is how much in the water, how much is having a human effect.
Yeah.
Now, this is very speculative. The last thing we're going to look at is some research that's published very recently. If we go to the final one, please, John. Sperm counts worldwide have plunged 62% in 50 years. So
62%?
Yes. So between 1973 and 2018, it was reported that America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand, the nations that have the most access to reproductive pills and are sexually revolutionized, have plummeted by more than 50% between those years. 1973 was when the progesterone pill was made available to market.
Same time as, by the way, the Hippocratic Oath was banned by the US Supreme Court. Ka-ching! Could we find some, that's just a pure coincidence, by the way. I was looking at that the other day. Yeah.
So we'll be going through some more stuff on Josh's contemplation series, which you can see if you subscribe to the website, and this will be out this Saturday at the time of recording. But I hope I've given you enough to chew on here, and I advise you go and watch Chris Williamson's interview as well with Dr. Hill and evaluate the evidence for yourself. We're not medical doctors, of course. Go talk to your doctor if you trust them, and make sure that you get a solid diagnosis if you have any of these symptoms. My point being, though, is I think socially, we need to come to a much better solution that creates more wholesome families, better relationships, and stops putting the onus on women to mass medicate to avoid pregnancy than possibly producing these adverse side effects for women. And if you're going to try out and go meet the love of your life, maybe switch off the pill, because you might be picking the wrong bloke and not even know it.
Thanks for watching that segment from the podcast Lotus Eaters. If you enjoyed that, you can find more on our website, lotuseaters.com, where you can also sign up for £5 a month and get access to all of our premium content, including this recent contemplations that Josh and I did about how science proves that leftists are in fact bad people. If you'd like to find more from Josh, you can follow him over at Getter at Josh_firm. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you again soon.